All right, everybody. So I am here with a very distinguished guest, and it is my honor and privilege to present Brian Slagel, CEO and founder of Metal Blade Records. Brian, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And first I want to say congratulations on 35 years.
I know, long time.
Can you believe it?
Now, but thanks.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny because, I've gone back and I've looked at some other stuff that, that you've done where you were talking to people and it's like, yeah, we're celebrating 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and here we are at 35 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's weird. In a lot of ways, it seems like it all happened yesterday. Went by really fast. And other times, man, it's been a long time. So it goes both ways. But it's cool. It's great to celebrate it, and we've been lucky to have 35 great years. So I can't complain.
Yeah. So with that being said, 35 years, you've got your book coming out, For the Sake of Heaviness, August 29th, the story of Metal Blade Records. And it's funny. When I was thinking about, our discussion and things we might be talking about, I'm like, what the heck are we going to talk about that's actually not going to be in this book? Obviously, we want everyone to go out and buy the book, and if we talk about it now, they're not going to want to go out and buy the book because they're already going to know everything.
Exactly.
So we got to talk about some things that maybe didn't quite make the cutting room floor, and or, talk about some of the highlights, some of the more, I don't know, amazing things that maybe people don't already know that, are in your book. We kind of leave them wanting for more. Obviously, you started, one of the things that really got me was you're 21 years old. 21 years old when you started the label, and I'm just like, man, I look back to when I was 21 years old. I didn't know what I was doing, and here you are creating something that's just incredible. So reflecting on that, talk to me. You're 21 years old. You're starting Metal Blade Records.
Yeah. Look, I was just a young, dumb kid that was a huge fan of heavy metal, and I never went into this thinking I was going to start a record label. I was working at a record store. I had a fanzine. I was helping out book some shows in L.A., and the local radio station had a metal show that we were kind of giving some stuff to. And there was all these great bands playing around L.A. at the time, and it really bothered me that nobody outside of L.A. knew that this existed. And this is years before computers and internet and cell phones, whatever.
Right.
So I just kind of got the idea. I was a big fan of the new wave of British heavy metal that was happening over in England at the time, and they had some compilations like Metal from Others that kind of do-it-yourself, independent attitude sort of thing. So I kind of got the influence from them. Went to the distributors I worked at the record store with and said, if I put together a local album of heavy metal bands from LA, would you guys sell it? And they all said, sure. So I never started thinking I was going to start a label or anything. I just wanted to help the scene out, put out a compilation record.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the stories you have, obviously, again, we have the book coming out, August 29th. And I guess, again, just kind of getting into it, why now, I guess? Why 35 years? How long have you been thinking about this, publishing this book?
Well, people kept bugging me to write a book for a while, and it's like, that's what you do when you're really old. But now I'm kind of getting a little older, so we're trying to figure out what to do for our 35th anniversary. We've done so many things in the past, box sets and all sorts of cool stuff. It just seemed like a book made sense, and kind of capitalize the 35 years. I just wanted to start telling some of these stories before I started forgetting some of them, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So it just made sense to do it, and we started on it a couple of years ago, and it comes out in a couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No. So, For the Sake of Heaviness, the story of Metal Blade Records. And from what I understand, Lars Ulrich, he's going to have a little hand in some of the scribing of this book. Is he doing like the foreword or something like that?
Yeah. He wrote the foreword. So okay. I've been friends with him forever. I mean, 37 years now. I think it's crazy. But I hate asking those guys for anything because they're super busy, and they have when I asked them about the foreword, they had a new record coming out. I said, look, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. And you don't want to do this, that's fine. But I thought he would be a good guy because he was there from prior to day one, really, with Metal Blades. So he was very nice and said, of course, no worries, I'll do it. And he did it, and it's really pretty humbling, a lot of the nice words he said in there. So it's great. And we've also got James Hetfield and Kerry King and a whole bunch of other people in the book, too.
Yeah, well, I imagine you know more than your share of people in the industry, that have become legends, and here you are with all these folks. But then again, you're legendary yourself at this point. I don't get the sense you really feel that way about yourself, but the fact that you've had this label, Metal Blade Records, being what it is, and it's known around the world, because of course it's not just in the United States, but 35 years. I mean, it's really, it's pretty incredible. And, I guess, again, just kind of thinking over all the experiences that you've had and stuff like that, and the fact you've been doing this since you were 21. There's like an old saying that when you do what you love, it's really not a job. Of course it's work, but it's not a job when you do what you love. So I guess I have to ask you, Brian Slagel, have you ever had a job?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're right, because if you do love it, it's not a job, and that's, I think, the number one most important thing for me is I still love the music to this day. Right. There are certain days where it's definitely a job, and there's things you have to do that you don't really like doing that aren't particularly very fun, and you're like dreading, but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I'm doing what I love with the music that I love, so you get past that stuff and realize it's just, that's only part of it, and most of it is pretty fun.
Yeah. Now, obviously, when you first started out, you're a fan. You're a fan of music, and that's why you got into this business in the first place. Now, all of a sudden, all of these people, a lot of these artists that you were fans of, now you're actually working with. Can you explain what that's like when that transition starts to take place where, these people that you've been listening to and, just having all this respect and admiration for, now you're one of them? What's that like?
Yeah, that's pretty surreal, quite honestly. We've been lucky enough to, we worked with Alice Cooper reissuing some records. We reissued some Deep Purple records, some and Lizzie stuff. These are all bands I was massive fans of, so being able to work with them and their management on that stuff is pretty crazy. And just being heroes through this whole thing, which is really crazy. Right. If you would have told 19-year-old me either Rod Smallwood, Iron Maiden's manager, I would have said you're completely out of your mind. So it's been pretty surreal and pretty fun to be a part of all that stuff. Sometimes not so great as others. Sure. You don't want to meet all your heroes sometimes, but 99% of them are all great, and it's really cool.
Yeah. So this book coming out again, August 29th. How long has this been in the works? How long has this taken you to put together?
Started about 2 years ago. We came up with the idea, then started working with my co-author, and basically I would just tell him stories, constantly, and it took about a year and a half of all this stuff, getting it together and doing all the interviews with everybody else, and then getting the book all done. So it's quite a process, and we initially wanted to come out a little bit earlier this year, but it just took so long that August 9th ended up being the time.
Yeah, for the sake of heaviness. Again, everybody, for the sake of heaviness. Brian Slagel and his story of Metal Blade Records. So we got to make sure that we get out and buy this book. And of course, we haven't even touched on anything that might be in it yet. But so it's been interesting speaking with authors and publishers and things like that in the past, and knowing everything that goes into writing a book, especially like a biography or an autobiography like this is. How did you determine what was in and what was out? Because obviously there was probably a lot left on the cutting room floor, yeah?
Oh yeah, I mean there's a ton of stuff that isn't in the book. I wanted it to be a really good, easy read. It's it's a story of a record label, so it's not super exciting. So I didn't want it to be 500 pages. So right. It's a couple hundred pages. It's a good 4 or 5 hour read. So there's certainly a lot of stuff that left out. It's more the history of the label. There's not a lot of the behind the scenes, hanging out with the band sort of stuff. But there's some of those things in there. And
okay.
I just really went through and did everything. And at the end of the day, there's definitely stuff that I left out. Other people say, hey, did you talk about this? I go, oh, I forgot about that, or something else. But maybe if I'm lucky enough to make another book, there might be some of that stuff.
Yeah, a part two. You've already left it open. You've already left it open for part two. Now,
awesome.
Did you have to go to any of the people that may have been, featured in your book and get permission?
Excuse me. Well, yeah, a little bit. I mean, we wanted to make sure everybody that's in the book knew what was going on. And clearly, there's a lot of interviews in there from different people, so we had to go do that. But I don't know that there's any real specific, I stayed away from any sort of legal stuff or anything that we have to
Right? You don't need that drama.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, there's not a lot of that anyway in our history, so that makes it a lot easier.
Right.
But it was definitely fun putting it together for sure. And it's just cool going down, kind of, I forgot about a lot of things. And when we were doing it, I was just looking at like the release schedule for each year, thinking like, that's right, I forgot about this or forgot about that. So it was cool.
You know what? That's a really good point. Did you find yourself getting at all nostalgic as you were thinking back on all the experiences you've had, over the last 35 years that maybe you hadn't thought about, that maybe you kind of forgot about, and now that you're on this project, it's like, wow, that was really amazing. Did you find a lot of that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Because doing this and working every day, you don't really get a chance to kind of reflect on things very often because you're doing so much work and it's a lot of stuff going on every day and you're constantly busy. So doing this was kind of fun to take a minute and go like, that was cool that we did that, and kind of forgot, we worked with these guys and that band when that kind of things happened. So I've been lucky enough looking over the whole course of the book, and I had to read it a few times, obviously, to make sure it was all good. Yeah. We worked with a lot of amazing people and bands over all these years, so it was pretty incredible, like putting it all together and reading it. I was like, wow, it's not a bad resume to have, I guess.
Yeah, right. Now, without spoiling, how everything came into being and how things got started and stuff like that, I'll just ask you this. Did you ever have any visions at all that Metal Blade Records would grow to become what it is today? I mean, was that ever even a thought in your mind when you first got started?
Absolutely not. I mean, I was just a fan trying to help out the scene. I didn't start this to start a label. If you would have told any of us back then, whether it's me or Metallica or Slagel or any of us back then, that this thing would become so huge, right, and we'd all be talking about this 35 years later, we all would have looked at you like you're insane. We were just living in the moment, doing what we love doing and thinking like if we can just, continue to do this for a couple more minutes, it might be fun. But we never, ever, ever thought that this would become so huge. I mean, it's really crazy how big all this stuff is. A band like Metallica is like one of the biggest bands in the world. Like, how the hell did that happen?
Right. And I mean, your roster over the years, like you just said, I mean, Metallica is just one of them. I mean, you've had so many bands that you've dealt with, either directly with the label or, people that you just kind of help behind the scenes, and I know that people are going to want to go out and buy for the sake of heaviness for that reason, just to see how many different musicians and artists you dealt with over the years that, maybe never made the news, no one ever knew about, no one ever talked about it, but it was instrumental in their development as musicians. Would that be accurate?
Sure. And, I look at it now where it's not just the history of the label, but it's really kind of the history of metal because we've been involved in so many different things and kind of had our hands in different stuff. So when you read through it, it's really the history of the label, and you get the history of all the bands and the people we work with and stuff. But it also is a pretty good history of heavy metal. I mean, not obviously everything, but it's still pretty good in there. And you see, kind of, because we touch on, obviously, we go through chronological order, so you have the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and beyond that. So it's interesting to look back on those various times and what was happening and how we kind of got through everything and what was happening in the metal world back then, too. So it's interesting, I think, at least, hopefully. Hopefully everybody else would think so, too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, obviously, as a lover of music, and Metal Blade is all about heavy metal, Are there any other genres of music that you actually like that maybe Metal Blade Records isn't involved with, or are you just metal through and through?
I'm just metal. That's really all there is to it. No, I mean, I can respect other types of music, but sure, when I listen to music for fun, for my personal enjoyment, I still listen to metal, especially old school, like 70s and 80s stuff.
Right on. That is so awesome. I guess of everyone that you've met over the years, obviously we're talking about the influence that Metal Blade has had on other artists and how you have helped, sculpt and mold the careers of other people. Has anyone ever had a rather intense or significant impact on you, in all of your dealings? Have you ever found anyone doing anything in particular that maybe made you do something differently as the founder and CEO of Metal Blade Records?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you come across a lot of people, and I made, a lot of mistakes in the early days, so I learned from a lot of different people, how to do stuff. I mean, our lawyer who's been involved from day one and he represents a bunch of huge artists now, so he's always a great guy to talk to because he's dealing with a whole different aspect of the music business than we are, and it's really interesting to get a good perspective there. Also, we were lucky enough, as I mentioned earlier, to work with Alice Cooper.
Right.
And that was a really interesting process because he's like the nicest guy in the world. And how that came about was one of the guys who worked for us was also a big journalist. And when the Raise Your Fist and Yell record came out, I think '87 or something, he was going to interview Alice. And he said, "Hey, do you want to come help me? Because, I mean, you know way more about Alice Cooper than I do." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Never met him before. I knew his assistant a little bit because we were both collectors and we collected a lot of Alice Cooper stuff, so we kind of were in the same circles a little bit. Anyway, went to the interview. It was an amazing interview. We were given an hour. At the end of an hour, this is, you guys have to move on. I said, no, give them as much time as they want. So stayed there for another 15 minutes or something. It was really incredible and such a nice guy. So fast forward to a few months later, I was in England for a bunch of festivals that our bands were playing, and there was an album release party there. And I got there really early because I had nothing else to do in London at that point. Didn't really know very many people. So I was sitting there by myself really early, just sitting on a couch in this venue or whatever where they were having the party. And I feel somebody's tapping me on the shoulder. I turn around, it's Alice Cooper. It's like, "Hey, Brian, how's it going?" I'm like, Alice Cooper remembers my name? And he could not have been a nicer, more wonderful person. And I was thinking to myself, this is like one of my idols from a kid. I was a massive fan in the 70s and one of the biggest rock stars ever. And he was so nice and friendly and down to earth. I was like, that made you really think, if he's that way, then I think everybody's got to be respectful and do it that way. That was really pretty amazing.
That's very cool. Now, one last thought that I want to kind of touch on, because I know you have a lot of other things going on, and again, thank you so much for your time, Brian. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Metal has evolved so much. It's changed really so much, since its start in, I guess arguably the 70s and into the 80s and everything like that. How do you feel about how the industry has evolved? Do you have any particular thoughts one way or the other, about the metal of 2017 versus the metal of 1982?
Well, it's interesting. I think at its core, it stayed, pretty much the same, and the philosophy and the style has remained the same. I think there's a couple of issues happening now that worry me for the long term here. There's not a lot of real great creativity right now. You don't hear a lot of bands doing something really different. But obviously it's hard to do because there's been so many different genres and so many styles. It's hard to really separate yourself. But I think for it to really go longer, and we obviously want this to go on forever, and we want it in 15 years to still be a viable genre. We don't want it to just be like classical and jazz or something where it exists, but it's not a viable new thing. Yeah. So I think it's really important for to find artists and help artists that are a little bit different. You look at a band like Ghost, for example, that has a fresh take on things, and they're actually breaking through. Probably the only band in the last 10 years that have really broken through. I do think there's a lot of really good bands out there now doing some interesting things, but it's really difficult to get them to that next level. I think as an industry, this is something we talk about a lot, is how do we do this? How do we get the next wave of stars going? Because in 10 or 15 years, Metallica and Iron Maiden and AC/DC and Guns N' Roses, these guys are going to be getting into their 60s and 70s. Right. They're not going to be cutting edge any longer. We need, the next crop wave of bands to come up and kind of, replace them. And I know those bands say the same thing. Hanging out with Kerry King last night, we were just talking about the same thing, and a lot of people do that. So I think that's our next big goal as an industry: is how do we develop, and more importantly, how do we get these bands out there? Because it's so hard now. There's so many different avenues of people who listen to music and how they discover new bands. So it's not one easy place to make it happen. So that's probably the biggest change and the biggest challenge we have moving forward.
All right, that's very interesting. Now, being the founder and CEO of Metal Blade Records, do you still find yourself heavily engaged in those types of efforts, in the day-to-day operations, identifying bands that, maybe trying to break out and trying to get them to that level, like as you have been over the last, few decades?
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, we have a phenomenal staff that makes my life a lot easier because I don't have to micromanage anything anymore at all. Sure. But sure, I mean, look, every band that's signed on Metal Blade has to eventually go through me. If it comes out on Metal Blade, it's approved, and I love it. So if you don't like it, blame me. It's my fault. But yeah, I mean, I'm involved in all that sort of stuff as much as I can be, and especially in the metal world. there's a whole lot of us that get together all the time and kind of talk about how we can all, make things better and work together and stuff. So I'm really heavily involved in a lot of that stuff too. But day to day, I mean, there's certainly not a whole lot of things that go on in Metal Blade that I don't know about. So.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Brian Slagel, thank you so much for your time. And everyone watching right now, for the sake of Heaviness, the story of Metal Blade Records drops August 29th. And obviously you'll be able to get that out on Metal Blade Records. And
yeah, go to metalblade.com and there's pre-orders and you can get it in bookstores, Amazon, Apple, everything.
All right. Well, Mr. Slagel, it's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody out there for all the support over these 35 years. Thanks to you as well.
Oh, yes.
We've been this without all you guys, so thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brian, thank you.
Thanks, man.